time for a Bible study. We're in Mark chapter 11, and we're going to be starting in verse 27. My Bible titles this section, Jesus' Authority Questioned. Let's see what it says. Verse 27, then they came again to Jerusalem. All right, so let's see here. Triumphal entry, Sunday. Verse 12, the next day, Monday. Right? And then he flips over the tables. Now in the morning, when they passed by and they saw the fig tree, Tuesday, then they came again to Jerusalem. Wednesday. There we go. Timelining. This chapter is great for timelining. And he was walking in the temple. The chief priests and the scribes, the elders, came to him. And they said to him, by what authority are you doing these things? And who gave you this authority to do these things? But Jesus answered and said to them, I will ask you one question, then answer me. And I will tell you by what authority I do these things. The baptism of John, was it from heaven or from men? Answer me. And they reason among themselves, saying, if we say from heaven, he will say, then why do you not believe me? But if we say from men, they feared the people, for all counted John to be a prophet indeed. So they answered and said to Jesus, we do not know. And Jesus answered and said to them, neither will I tell you by what authority I do these things. Yeah. So I think we might actually move forward, because to me it's setting the scene. It's setting the scene because it says, then he began to speak in parables. And so setting this scene, we just see that these guys are out to get Jesus, right? And maybe one exhortation for you guys is to be discerning. And I'm looking at who's watching. You're all really nice people. You're nothing like me. You know, many people have no interest in the truth. They just want to make their point. They just want you to agree with them. And you guys are really nice, and you probably wouldn't argue with them, but I can get argumentative at times if I'm not like, I'm gonna, whoa, oh, there we go. I was wondering why everything was kind of shaking. It's because I had my tripod was tilted. Anyway, so, but I'll argue with people and get angry and frustrated, and actually, I usually keep my cool real well, but it's like, I'm gonna try and win this argument. And these guys, as you can tell, they really just wanted to be right. And when they were faced with a question that they knew it put them in a position that proved they were wrong, well, they were unwilling to answer it. And that's a real heart issue. Maybe there is meat in here for us to chew on, because an exhortation that actually was on my mind this morning. So I don't know, God works in mysterious ways, how sometimes I'm thinking about random things, and then it just happens to tie into our text that I hadn't even looked at yet. The idea of being right. You see, the only way you are ever right is if what you believe is truth. Sounds pretty orthodox, right? I mean, I'm not making up weird stuff there. You're only right if what you believe is true. Now, let's just pretend that Carlos, right, he thinks that the earth is a sphere. Now, just to make myself the loony guy, I'm going to say that the earth's flat. Now, it can't be a sphere and be flat, right? this is not a perspective thing. This is a pretty, these are contrary views. Well, it's spherical on top of the flat bottom. You know what I'm saying, though, right now. Here's the reality of truth. I'm not even discussing this issue, but either Carlos is right and I'm wrong, or I'm right and Carlos is wrong, or the earth's a pyramid and we're both wrong. But there's absolutely no way that we can both be right. Okay? I mean, that's the thing. And as Christians, we believe in a God who is in himself truth. This was actually one of the things I taught on last weekend. Thy word is truth was the theme of the conference I was teaching at. And we just talked about it, right? Jesus declared, I am the truth. He's put that article there, like, I am the truth, which is in counter-distinction to all other truths that are out there. I am the truth, right? And thy word is truth. And the word became flesh. And he was in the beginning. And all things were made through him and by him and for him. And so the God is truth. He is as much truth as he is love. And he is no more nor less of either. Holy truth, holy love. And so truth is not something that we are supposed to come up with. Truth is not something that needs to be built. Truth is not something that needs to be constructed. Truth is something that can only be revealed or discovered. Truth is something that can only be revealed or discovered because it is. Truth is just there. God can reveal it to us, or we can discover it, or obviously kind of a combo of the two. How does this relate to these Pharisees? Well, Pharisees, chief priests, scribes, elders, I mean, it's the whole lot, right? And you see, they were not concerned with the truth. They were concerned with being right. Now, who cares if you seem right if in fact you're wrong? This is where I've always tried, and I still try it. I think I had a conversation the other day with some friends about Mike Winger and how I really respect that, in my opinion, as I look at him and watch him teach on YouTube and Facebook and elsewhere in his ministry, he seems like a guy who's very willing to be wrong. He's very willing to change his views if he discovers he's wrong, because he would change his views in order to be right again. And so it's really more just a heart issue now. Are we willing to change? Are we willing to admit we were wrong in order to change and once again be right? I would encourage all Christians to have a twofold attitude towards truth. For one, do not be ashamed of being right and the truth. You don't need to tiptoe around the truth. It's kind of like tiptoeing around who God is and his character. It's like, no, this is truth, and we don't need to be quiet about it. We don't need to be ashamed about it. This is truth. And on the other side, we need to be open to the possibility that we could have misunderstood something or not have had all the evidence given to us. We hadn't quite dug up the truth all the way. We hadn't had everything revealed to us. And so maybe we didn't know what was right. But we don't need to tiptoe around it when we think that we are right. See, the Pharisees, they weren't willing to give Jesus an answer. Jesus set something before them that made them face the fact that they might be wrong. And instead of dealing with that and admitting we were wrong, they dodged the question. And people will do that. And quite often it's sad because many Christians Many Christians, people who are going to be in heaven with us, have a lot of false beliefs. Now, I'm not talking about like damnable heresies, because they wouldn't be Christians then, would they? But they've got some off beliefs, and there are some churches that have some off beliefs, and there are some that are so whacked out, they could have gotten a letter from Paul. But you see, Paul, in most of his letters, he's correcting people. Come on, Galatians. Like, having begun in the spirit, he can be made perfect in the flesh. Corinthians, like, this kind of stuff shouldn't even be spoken of amongst the Gentiles. Holy smokes, right? And so Paul sent a lot of correction letters out because Christians are often wrong about stuff. But sadly, many won't ever become right because they're unwilling to commit to the pursuit of truth. These Pharisees, these elders and scribes, they were willing to enter into the argument, and they made their, well, this is why we believe what we believe. But they were unwilling to sit down and hash it out when someone else with wisdom and knowledge, Jesus, was willing to counter what they believed and bring the problems before them. And so if we're not willing to sit down, talk about theology. Now, it's tough when, maybe you don't feel like you're a very knowledgeable Christian, but you still believe what you believe is true. And then you run into someone else who might actually be false, but they seem to know a whole lot about it, and they could maybe win an argument. But listen to them. Write it down. And then go take that to someone who you think could help you work through it. You see, if you just stubbornly close your mind, you might miss out on the opportunity to be corrected in your beliefs and brought closer to the truth and the true knowledge of God. But on the flip side, if you enter into these arguments and don't settle them, you might be stumbled to start believing they're true if they're not in fact true. And that's why I say, chase these things down. Take the opportunity to study and learn. I know some of you who are watching right now have sent me questions like, okay, I'm caught up on this thing. I'm seeing these posts on Instagram and they look really convincing. And so can you help me work through this? And that's what we do. We work through it and we go, well, you see, it looked convincing, but and so pursuit of truth. That's the exhortation for today. These people who came to Jesus, they didn't want the truth. They just wanted their position to be affirmed. We need to love truth. We need to pursue truth. And in order to do so, we need to be able to go on a limb and be willing to be wrong about stuff. We need to be open-minded that things that we've for many years thought to be true could in fact be false. Now here's what I'm finding. I'm not even that old in the grand scheme of things yet. But as years go by, I see myself like, what is the kind of gravel? There's a specific name for the type of gravel, but I guess any gravel would work. But the kind that settles and gets really compact. I've got like some river rock and like pea gravel. That stuff always is just shifting around. But the kind that's more jagged, it locks in time. You get those little tampers and tamp it down. And I'm finding that my theology is very much so tamping down. Over time, less and less is changing. Less and less, like, because the more I go at it, it just seems this is getting more solid and solid and solid. And I think by being willing to question myself, being willing to go on limbs and seek things out, but also continually just challenging and processing, I'm tamping down my theology. So now it's getting really firm. And things can still shift and move. They still do. But, man, the confidence I have, just knowing that I've challenged these things, I've tested these things, and they keep coming out true. And so be open to be challenged, be open to question things. But at the same time, don't quickly jump to another boat just because of the first argument you hear, right? Search the scriptures diligently. It's an honorable thing, as spoken of the Bereans. And we all need to become diligent studiers who are workers who need not be ashamed, because we know how to rightly divide the word of truth, as 2 Timothy 2:15 tells us, right? So this is the goal, that we dig more, seek more, allow ourselves to be questioned, and don't just defend our positions because they're our positions, but speak out why they're true and hear the opposition, and yeah, will it all pan out in the end? So there's something for you. I thought we'd have to move on to chapter 12 because it kind of leads into now his real response. Jesus in chapter 12 is going to open with a teaching because of what just happened with these guys. So I guess we will get that tomorrow at 8 a.m. live here on Facebook and post it again to YouTube once it's done. God bless you guys. Have a great day. Cheers.